why Unreal Engine 5.1 is a huge deal. And I'm a massive fan. So far, I'm a massive fan of Unreal Engine. Like when I watch a studio struggling with their own engine, I'm every year I have less sympathy for them, because I'm like, you knew this existed. You could have just chose this and spent all your money on making a good game rather than making your own engine from scratch, right? Which is it's a decision they all have to make at the very beginning. And when you see them choose to make their own engine, you're like, that's a lot of the budget that just went to that. I hope you don't regret it, you know? And it's also, how much does Unreal Engine take? What percent of your budget? What do they charge? It's like 1% of your sales or something. It's nothing. It's literally nothing. It depends. Engine Monopoly is pretty bad. Yeah, Engine Monopoly could be pretty bad. Engine Monopoly could be pretty bad, potentially. But there's also so much like that you get out of it. Like how many hours of testing has this engine gone through? How many hours of bugs have been fixed? You know, like how many millions of dollars are poured into this engine every day, every week, every year, to make it better and better and better. And like, how is your little in-house engine going to compete with that? I don't know. I don't know enough about engine making to know, but it would be a terrifying prospect for me to make my own engine and try to compete with and try to make something that can do this. So with all that out of the way, stop being so pessimistic. I'm not pessimistic. I would be scared. I would be scared in that situation. Not to mention that China can use your UE 4 and 5 projects as their own will, like they did with Bright Memory. I'm not sure what Bright Memory is. I haven't heard about that. So here we go. This is why it's a huge deal. And but like someone said earlier, like when you're playing a UE 4 game or a UE 3 game, there's a lot of games where you boot it up and you're like, this is a UE 3 game. And it just kind of rubs you wrong. I don't know how to describe it, right? Like there's sometimes like there is a downside to everybody using the same engine. Like there are a lot of developers that don't put enough effort into making it feel different. Yeah. Do I have a playlist for the music? I don't, sorry. Okay, here we go. Unreal Engine 5.1, a huge deal. And I'm curious why 5.1 specifically is a huge deal.
Update for Unreal Engine 5 just released called 5.1, and it is a huge deal. The reason why is one word, and that is foliage. Since Unreal Engine 5 came out,
like, is this in-game footage? Okay, it's just not fair what kids get to play today. Yeah, foliage is like when you're playing a game that looks really good and a game that doesn't, like the first thing you can look for is foliage. And like when there's a lot of it, it adds so much. And when there's not, it's like if you go boot up any game from 15 years ago, there's like no foliage, right? So one of the biggest differences.
It introduced a revolutionary new way of rendering geometry called Nanite. To briefly sum up Nanite, every object you see in computer graphics is composed of tiny flat planes of geometry called polygons. And the more polygons you have in your environment, the longer it will take to render. This is why video games have developed a system called level of detail, or LOD for short. The further away an object is from the camera, the less polygons it will use to render that object. This makes games run faster since there's less polygons that have to be rendered, but it is very time consuming to create all those LODs. Nanite replaces LODs because it uses dynamic level detail. This means you can have an object with millions of polygons without any LODs because polygons dynamically deform, lowering the amount of polys on an object. A good example of Nanite in use.
I don't know what any of that means, but it sounds freaking cool. It's he's saying that the polygons deform so that they're not polygons anymore. You don't have to make it out of polygons. You can make it out of deformed polygons. That's pretty cool, man. It sounds really cool. Anybody in here that speaks this lingo? Anybody that is actually able to digest these words? Any developers? Huh? They are Daralgons, just less surfaces to render. Okay, all right. Simplifying the faces to reduce resource costs. Oh, okay. I teach this stuff to people and ask about LODs. I tell them I can't teach them because it's over the scope of the class. So it's a pretty complex topic. Okay.
Is this desert? If I come up to lit, Nanite, triangles, we can see nanite in action. Every color is an individual polygon, and there are millions of them, without a single LOD being used. The biggest issue with nanite is that it did not work with foliage. This means we still have to rely on level of detail for foliage like shrubs, grass, and trees. Trees generally use billboards as the lowest level of detail, which is just a flat plane with a texture that, as you can see, does not look very nice. Here is an example.
These are what we use in ESO, and it works really well. I mean, it's crazy how well this has worked for how long it's worked. Like, it's deceptively effective. It is. It works so well. It's crazy. You get it to rotate the right way when you're walking around it, and you hardly notice.
Example of what a billboard looks like. I have Unreal Engine 5 opened up, and in this environment, all the trees are using level of details because that was the only option. Now, if I move my camera far away, you can see that the trees change LODs until they are using billboards. And the transition looks pretty bad. Notice how even the shadows disappear because billboards only block light if it's facing it. Now in Unreal Engine 5.1, we finally get nanite foliage. To enable nanite on foliage is pretty simple. You want to open up the static mesh, and within here, make sure enable nanite support is turned on.
This is like, how crazy is this? Like, I could enable nanite on my foliage in this game. Like, and I don't know what I'm doing. This is the craziest part about this freaking engine, is that it's so accessible. It could, like, little tiny studios could do things that big studios spend millions of dollars developing, in a click of a button. Boop.
And this is unique for foliage. Select preserve area. That's how if we aren't too far away, the object won't disappear. And then press apply changes. I went ahead and did the exact same process to all the trees in this environment. Now when the camera flies away, there is no LOD transitions.
Looks a lot better.
Billboards. The trees retain the same quality as if they're being viewed up close. And the shadows do not disappear at long distances. There is no loss in performance. In fact, we gained an extra 5 frames. So it is more performant than LODs. So nanite not only looks better, it runs better in certain scenarios. Here's another example showing the power of nanite. This is what it looks like without nanite. The level of detail is noticeable because you can see that in the distance, the trees are just textures. Also, the lighting is casting incorrect shadows. And this is the same environment, but with nanite enabled. The trees far away are no longer being faked by inaccurate textures. All the trees are real geometry that exists in the world, and we did not lose any performance.
Crazy,
I wanted to push
dude.
the limit of nanite foliage.
Crazy.
So I created a forest that is 4 square kilometers. In total, there's over 100,000 trees in this environment, and I'm still getting decent performance.
Yeah, how is he rendering
and
that?
As a reminder, this is all in real time. This level of density was only possible in pre-rendered movies. Also, it makes life easier. We don't need several different versions of an object for LODs anymore. On top of nanite, foliage now interacts with light accurately. In real life, light passes through or bounces inside of leaves.
Isn't it crazy that this is in-engine footage? You've actually got like light going through like surfaces, and you got subsurface scattering, and you've got like shadow. It's just like
creating subsurface scattering. Previously, this did not work with UE5's lighting, but now it does. This is foliage in Unreal Engine 5.0. Notice how the shadows are way too dark and unrealistic. And here's foliage in Unreal Engine 5.1. Now light is passing through the leaves and illuminating the ground, which looks a lot nicer. This is a subtle change, but it does make a big difference. They also added nanite landscapes, but it is feature incomplete and still in early.
You didn't notice it? Oh, I totally saw it.
Access. Hopefully in the next version of Unreal, we get proper nanite landscapes.
But everything you're watching is also it's going from YouTube to my screen. So it's going through one layer of compression, and then it goes from my screen through the Twitch recompression, and then you watch it there. So like, it's being twice recompressed from his upload.
Of course, foliage is not the only major change. When Unreal Engine 5 released, it introduced a new lighting system called Lumen, which gave us high performance dynamic bounce lighting. And while it was revolutionary, there was one big issue, and that is it did not work with translucent materials. So glass and water reflections were pretty much broken. It was so bad that I was recommending people to not use glass, since the reflections were completely different from the environment. Right now, I have a previous Unreal Engine version open up, And this house's windows reflections make no sense.
No, it's
You see
reflecting the
that we're getting
sun.
reflection from nowhere. And same thing for this glass jar. And this
Okay, but I mean, this looks like a picture of somebody's house. I mean, aside from like nitpicking the lighting, like this is crazy.
is the same environment in 5.1. But you will notice that there is no change yet in the reflections. And that's because we have to go into our post-process volume and under reflections, lumen reflections, make sure high quality translucency reflection is turned on. Now we get a one-to-one reflection with our environment. We can better see this in the glass cupboard. There is an accurate reflection of the room.
Oh my
You
God,
can even
dude.
see the table and windows within that reflection. The only downside is that the
Disgusting.
setting does lower performance, so there is a cost, but nothing is free, and now reflections work. Water isn't broken anymore because of this new setting. Before this update, to get true reflection, we would have to use planar reflection and then manually move it to line it up with the water. Now I can just enable translucent to get realistic water reflections without having to use a reflection capture. This also fixes reflections for large bodies of water. Notice how on the side of the viewport, we have weird reflections. This is because by default, Unreal is using screen space for translucent reflections. So that's why we get this artifacting. And to get rid of it now, just within the post-process volume, activate high quality translucency reflection.
Dude, it's so ridiculous. Yeah. So in order to make your game look like the tippity top of the spectrum of, you know, AAA titles, what you have to do is check this box. Boom. Now your game looks better than a $400 million game that was made 3 years ago. Congratulations. What? Dude, it's just freaking crazy. It's
So now we
crazy.
get accurate, large body reflections without any artifacting. Also, besides lumen reflections working with glass and water, Lumen Global Illumination has seen massive improvements. Lumen now has a much more accurate
Make a version of ESO. Yeah, Zos. When is the ESO 2 Unreal Engine 5 coming out? 5.1. Or what if they did ESO 1.5, you know, ESO 1.5 in Unreal.
bounce lighting because it is bouncing light from the object surface instead of a voxel approximation. What this means is that our environment is indirectly illuminated more and there's less noise. Right here is a simple room with a point light in the old version, and here it is in 5.1. The shadows are more illuminated, and we got rid of the weird occlusion in the corners. Here's another example of just indirect sky lighting in version 5, and here it is in 5.1. You can tell that the secondary bounces are more accurate and powerful. And finally, there's a lot less noise when using emissive materials. In this example, there's a lot of noise when I move the light around. And here it is in 5.1, there is no noise. You can't even tell that this is real time. It looks path traced. Lumen wasn't the only lighting system that got approved. Now the path tracer supports sky and atmosphere. Just make sure in your post-process volume under path tracing, reference atmosphere is enabled. Also, path tracing now finally supports decals and light functions. For those who want to use traditional light baking, the GPU light mask
Looks like
has
a picture.
seen massive improvement. First off, the light mask works. At release, it was crashing, but now since it is more stable, the quality of the lighting is better, and the denoiser has improved in dark areas. Also, the GPU light mask now supports sky and atmosphere
The heck's
right
happening?
out of the box. Besides lighting, there's also an interesting change to how large Unreal levels can be. In past versions of Unreal, if you are really far away from the world of origin, Unreal Engine starts to break. For example, I'm in Unreal Engine 4 and I'm very far from the origin. The widgets are starting to break apart because Unreal can't calculate what is happening that far away. Now in 5.1, the recommended area for an environment has expanded from 22 kilometers to 88 million.
What? That's not even reasonable. But yeah. So it was 22, and you know, we tweaked the code a little bit. We changed a couple things around, you know, some priority, and yeah. So now it's 88 million. What? 88 million kilometers. Can you imagine, dude? Can you imagine the stuff that's gonna be made in this engine over the next decade, guys? Holy cow! Just talk about like enabling developers, man. Just giving them so much power. It's too little. Yeah, 88 million, that's all. Where's Unreal 6?
Kilometers. So as you can guess, we can create some pretty large worlds now. And finally, the last major change of note is animation with the sequencer. Animating anything in Unreal is done in the sequencer with keyframes. And if you want to move a sequence of keyframes earlier or later in the timeline, you have to select each one individually. For example,
I think probably the craziest thing about everything that he's saying right now is this was a 0.1 patch. This isn't jumping from 4 to 5. This isn't jumping from 5 to 6. This is going from 5.0 to 5.1. Dude, what?
Let's say maybe I want this ship to fly off earlier. What I'm going to have to do is hold down Shift and select every single keyframe and then move them back. That's how the animation starts. The ship is...
It's that easy to make an animation in Unreal Engine? Dude. You just draw a little path and then your object kind of goes, man. Nice. Nice.
Already flying off.
Easy.
5.1 makes this process a lot easier with layer bars, which make retiming keyframes a breeze. Instead of selecting each keyframe individually, I can select the bar as a whole, which will move all the keyframes of the object with it. So with one click, I can retime the animation. That's how it's sooner, instead of selecting all of them. Those were all the most important major changes of Unreal Engine 5.1. Now, this was just my opinion. Of course, there are hundreds of other new features and bug fixes. So if you are curious, I recommend you check out the release notes in the description below. If you want to keep up to date with everything Unreal Engine, make sure to subscribe to this channel.
You heard someone joke about making a game this weekend. Looks like we're getting there. No, seriously, dude. This is just, there's like, think of all the back end work that you normally have to do before you can just slap something in your game and start throwing it around like that and checking boxes. Oh my Lord.
Unreal is more important than ever because half of all announced next-gen games are being made on UE5. There's no
half of all next-gen games. They've already got half of every other game that is made on Unreal Engine for next gen. That is insane. Only concern is that it's so popular. Yeah, it's, and the only way to counteract that is to make another engine that is so popular. But you look what it can do, and yeah, it isn't surprising. You look at all the money that's saved by using it. Stop making games on last gen so you can move forward. Hey, they will soon. They will soon. You know, there's still a lot of people on last gen.
Better time to learn Unreal Engine than now. Luckily for you, I have an entire free course right here on YouTube.
Oh, you do?
Which goes over all the essentials to learn UE. You
Nice.
can check it out in the description below.
And it's like, and it does feel like, it feels like if you put your mind to it, you could theoretically, do this, doesn't it? It's crazy when it's capable of.